All right, guys, so today we're factoring trinomials. We're going to use something called the swing method, which you don't know how lucky you are. When I was your age and we learned this, there was nothing that they showed us like this. It was basically guess and check. So make sure you memorize how to do this. It'll make your life much, much easier. Now, before we look at the swing method in factoring trinomials, I want to review from yesterday. So I want to write the numbers that give me a sum of -5. We're not going to use the x's, and a product of -50. Now, we need to break our -50 down into two numbers that will multiply together to give it, see which ones, if we added them together, would give us -5. Now, since it's -50, one of our terms is going to be positive, one negative. So I'm just going to write the positives from now, and we can kind of look at them. The first one will be 1 times 50, but there is no combination of positive ones, -50s, anything that will give us -5. Then I can go to 2 and 25. Again, -2 plus 25 is not going to work. 2 plus -25 is not going to work. 3 won't work, won't go into 50 evenly, neither will 4, but 5 will, and you get 5 and 10. Now, I think I want to check those. Those are pretty close together. If I had -5 plus 10, that would give me 5, which that's not what I want. But if I did -10 plus 5, now I get -5. Which is what I want. So -10 times 5 is -50, -10 plus 5 is -5, so my answer is 5 and -10. And if you can do that, that's one of the harder parts of the swing method. So hopefully that goes okay. Remember, you got to get help on that, because if you can't do that, you're going to have a lot of trouble with what we're about to do. Now, we got a lot of steps here for the swing method. There's 6, and you have to follow each one. I'm not going to read them out to you at the moment. I'm going to work on the next example as we read through them. So as I go, kind of look back up at your steps for solving swing method. Now the first step, and we're going to work number 3 here, it says the first step is arrange in the format ax squared plus bx plus c. That means you want your x squared portion first, then just your x portion, then your number. Ours is already set up that way. But I'm going to write that little equation right above it, because now I can see where my ax, x, and my number line up. I need to recognize, though, that a is actually 1 here, the number in front of x squared, b is 12, and c is going to be 32. Now, if I look at the number 2, it says write 2 sets of parentheses with the variable you are working with in front of each. So I'm going to open up 2 sets of parentheses, and the variable working with this is x. So I'm going to put x in the front column of each. Number 3 says, find the numbers that sum to b and yield a product of a times c. That's what we just did in the review. We have to go up here in the sums to, I wrote that on the wrong line there. Let me erase this. Sorry, guys. Hope you didn't do that too. Open up 2 parentheses, x is in the front. Sorry, my screen gets small on this. Now it says it sums to b. Well, I know b is 12, so I have to find 2 numbers that add up to 12. But it also says that yield a product of a times c. Now, since there was nothing in front of x squared, that means a is 1. My c is the last number. If I multiply those together, I get 32. So I need 2 numbers that add up to 12 and multiply together to give me 32. So I'm going to move over here to the other side. I'm going to start with my product number 32, and I'm going to start breaking it apart. I need to see if I have any 2 that add up to 12. I have 1 and 32. That is definitely not going to work. I have 2 and I have 16. That gives me 18. That's not going to work. I have 3 won't work. I have 4 and 8. If I look there, oh, that works. 4 plus 8 equals 12. So that means my answer is 4 and 8, just like we did yesterday. Now if I read number 4, it says put those numbers, the 4 and the 8, into the parentheses behind the variables. And you have to take their signs. So I'm not just going to write 4, I'm going to write plus 4. I'm not just going to write 8, I'm going to write plus 8, okay? Now there is still some directions left. We're almost finished. It says we will now divide each factor by a and reduce it if possible. Well, guys, I know that a equals 1, so I'm going to divide both of these by 1, and I'm going to simplify and see what happens. Now I have x plus 4 over 1. Well, 4 divided by 1 is just 4, so that doesn't change anything. I get x plus 4. Now I have the x plus 8 divided by 1, but again, 8 divided by 1 doesn't change, so I have x plus 8. So that is our answer. Now, number 6 says if you still have a fraction after reducing, which we didn't, we would then swing the denominator out in front of the variable. Well, ours simplified without a fraction, so we didn't have to do the swing on this one, but I'll show you that on the next one. So let's go to the next page. Number 4, 2y squared minus 7y plus 6. Now the same thing happens here. We do all the same rules. It's just now I actually have a that's something other than 1. It's already written in the right order. I have a number times a variable squared, a number times that variable, and then a number. So I need to open up my parentheses, and I'm going to have y and y. Those are my first two moves. Now it sums to whatever b is. Well, b is negative 7 this time. You have to take the sign with it. It has to multiply together, meaning a times c. I'm going to have to take 2 for a, 6 for c, and I get 12. Now I have to do what we did yesterday. So I'm going to break apart 12. But you have to know, I need a negative 7. So it's obvious that both of my terms are not going to be positive. The only way to get a positive out of negatives is if both of my terms are negative. Now I'm going to start with 1 and 12. But if it was negative 1 and negative 12 or 1 and 12, it's not going to work. Okay, it'll give me negative 13 or 13. I go down to 2 and 6. If it was negative 2 plus negative 6, it'd be negative 8. That's not right. 2 plus 6 would be 8, so neither of those work. Now I come to 3 and 4. Well, I know 3 plus 4 is 7, but I need to be negative. Negative 3 plus negative 4 gives us the negative 7. So there are the answers. Let's put them in our parentheses. I put the negative 3 and the negative 4. Now we have to go back to the division part. This is back to Rule 5. Divide each factor by a. Well, a equals 2. So I'm going to take each of these factors and divide them by 2 and see what happens. Now I have to simplify them to their, reduce them to their, I don't like reducing, I have to simplify them to their lowest terms. Well, 3 over 2, I can't simplify that any further, and it left a denominator. So I'm going to swing the denominator in front of my y. So I now have 2y minus 3. Now if I looked at the next one, 4 divided by 2 does simplify to just 2. It did not have a denominator, so I just write y minus 2. And there is our answer. Now when you think about that, there would have been 2 and it should have been over 1. But if I swung the 1 up in front of the y, it wouldn't have made any difference. So that's why I just left it off. That is about as hard as it gets. If you can do that one, you're sitting pretty good. Let's go to number 5. Now, number 5 goes back to a not being anything other than 1, so it makes it a little easier. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my parentheses. S is my variable, so I'm going to put it first. I know it has to sum to whatever b is. B is 2. It has to multiply together to a times c. A is 1, c is negative 48. So my multiplies together is negative 48. So I need to break apart my 48. Again, negative 48. Let's see, I could have, one of them has to be negative, one positive. I've got 1 and 48. If either of them is negative, it's not going to give us 2. I can go 2 and 24, but again, it doesn't matter if either of them are negative. It's not going to give me 2. 3 will go into 48. Let's see, that would be 16 times. So even if one of them was negative, I wouldn't get down to 2. I have to go next to 4. 4 will go into 48. It looks like 12 times. But again, negative 4 plus 12 or 4 plus negative 12 won't give me 2. 5 doesn't go into it, but 6 does 8 times. Well, that's interesting. Those are 2 apart. So let's see. If I had negative 6 plus 8, I would actually get the 2. That's what I wanted. So there's my answer. Now, if that didn't work, you could try 6 plus negative 8 and see if it works. So I'm going to take those two numbers, and I'm going to put them in my parentheses. Minus 6 and plus 8. Now we have to divide everything by a, and it looks like our a in this case is 1. Well, we should know if I divide both sides by 1, even if I swung that 1 up here, it's not going to make any difference. So our answer is just x minus 6 or s plus 8. And guys, just so you know, it could be s plus 8 times x minus 6. That's the same thing. It doesn't matter the order. So there's our answer. Let's go to number 6. Now, number 6, 7, and 8 don't give us the sums to and multiplies together, but we can do that ourselves. The first one, I want to check the order. It is an ax squared plus bx plus c form, and I'm going to open up my parentheses. I'm going to put an x inside both. Now, it sums to b, which in this case is negative 7, and it has a product, which is a times c. A times c is 3 times negative 6, which I got to be negative 18. So let's work with negative 18 and see what we can do. Well, I know one of them has to be negative, but I have 1 and 18. Doesn't matter if one of them is negative or not, it's never going to give me negative 7. I can then go to 2 and 9. Well, that seems like a little bit better. I'm going to try this out. I'm going to do negative 2 plus 9. Well, that gives me 7, so that didn't work. Well, I don't know what I just did there. But if I did 2 plus negative 9, I do get negative 7. So there's our answers. So we write them after our x's. And remember, it doesn't matter what order. I'm going to put plus 2 and minus 9. But it really doesn't make a difference which order you put them in. Okay? Now we need to do our division. It looks like a is 3 this time. So I'm going to divide both sides, or both terms, by 3. If I look here, 2 over 3 is simplified as far as it'll go. Remember, you can use your calculator to help you with that. So I'm going to swing the 3 up to the front, and I get 3x plus 2. And then the next one, I have 9 divided by 3. Well, 9 divided by 3 actually gives me 3. So I have x minus 3. There's your answer. Now remember, you can always check this, by the way, by doing our distribution. If you do the distribution, you should get the same thing we started with, okay? Now we're going to change up number 7 a little bit. I'm going to make it positive t squared minus 3t minus 70, okay? It's a little bit different than what we have written up there, but it'll help you out a lot. Now I need to open up my parentheses. I know I have t's in both of these. And I need the sum that equals b, which is negative 3. And my product is a times c. 1 times negative 70 is negative 70. So we may have to do a few on this one. It's kind of a big number. Okay, I'm going to break up 70 over here, negative 70. 1's going to have to be positive, 1 negative. Well, if I have 1 and 70, that is not going to work to give me 3 in any way. Also have 2 and 35, but again, those are too far apart to help us. 3 won't go into 70. 4 won't go into 70 either, but 5 will. It'll go into it 14 times. So we're getting closer, but negative 5 plus 14 is negative, or positive 9, and 5 plus negative 14 will be negative 9, so it doesn't work. 6 won't go into 70, but 7 will 10 times. Now that looks pretty good, so I'm going to try that one out. I have negative 7 plus 10 gives me positive 3. That didn't work. But also I have 7 plus negative 10. That does give me negative 3. There are the answers. So I'm going to go ahead and just flip it up so that you can realize I'm going to put minus 10 first and plus 7 second, but it works just the same. Now I have to check my division. A is 1 this time, so you might know by now when it's 1, nothing's going to change. If I divide those by 1, I end up with t minus 10 times t plus 7. So not so bad. All right, let's do the last one. Okay, I'm going to erase a few things up here, so if you need to do get anything off, go ahead and pause and rewind. Number 8 is probably the hardest one today. It's not too bad, though. Now, first, it's not written in the right order. I need to write it with my 6x squared plus 17x plus 5. Okay? Now, I need to go ahead and break open my parentheses. And I have x and x. I know I have to have a sum that equals b, and that's 17, and a product of a times c, which is 6 times 5, so positive 30. So that's not so bad. I come over here, I write my 30. Well, I've got 1 and 15. I'm sorry, 1 and 30. Well, 1 plus 30 or 30 plus 1 does not give me the 17 I want. 2 will go into it 15 times. Well, 2 plus 15 is 17, so there's my answer. So I'm going to put plus 2 plus 15. Now we have to do our division, and this time a is 6. So I'm going to divide them by 6. Now here's where simplification really helps. I'm going to rewrite this, but I'm going to do simplify each fraction. 2 over 6 I can simplify to 1/3. And 15 over 6, I can simplify to 5/2. And if you have trouble with that, talk to me or use your calculator. Now, I'm going to use the swing method. I'm going to swing the denominators in the front of my variables. So what I get when I do that is 3x plus 1 and the other one I swung up to 2, so 2x plus 5. So that's a quick overview, guys. We're going to be working on this again tomorrow. If you have questions, you've got to come and ask. If you get this down now, it's going to make your life a lot easier in the future. So good luck.